topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hi, I'm Shelby Wagner, and I'm welcoming you to my talk show, Learning to Dance in the Rain, where we talk about different issues of some of them are critical, some of them not so, but maybe they're things that are bothering you and information that you'd like to get to know. We're having a little bit of difficulty with technology of my guests, so I'm going to talk for a minute about my own book, Learning to Dance in the Rain, Surviving Grief, Learning Internet Dating, and Romance Scams. That was kind of the basis for this show, because in this book I talk about critical life issues, grieving, losing a loved one, whether it's through divorce or a death, which my husband passed away just before our 50th wedding anniversary. So I talk about grief. I help with regaining your self-confidence. And then I was scammed when I went on the internet looking for a new partner. And so that's been my mission ever since, is to educate about scams. And I have a book out that tells you about 150 different scams. And 3 of my stories one of them was a death threat. Have you ever received a death threat on the text message? Well, I have been through that, and I tell you what, it makes you look over your shoulder and be more careful about your surroundings, and that's important for everybody. Always be aware of your surroundings. Are there strangers around, and are they doing things that they shouldn't be doing? One time I was at a shopping mall, and I was done, and I got to the door that was farther from my car than I usually parked. And as I walked out the door, I saw these 3 or 4 older teenagers or young 20s, whatever they were. And I started to walk across the sidewalk, and then they kind of started to walk the same direction I was walking. And I thought, I'm not going to do this. So I went back into the mall, went down to the place where I was closer to the car. And when I went out there, I didn't see them anymore and went safely to my car. But who knows what would happen. But I just got word that my guest for today is here finally, and I hope we can hear her. I want to introduce a chartered life underwriter and chartered financial consultant who has written a new book, a wonderful new book. Let me give a description, and then we'll have her come out. Her name is Bonita Bell-Anderson, and her book description starts with, in moments of dramatic life events that leave you suddenly single, whether from divorce settlements or losing your spouse, financial transformations bring immense challenges. And boy, is that ever true. Excuse me here, I forgot to turn my phone off here, so can't get calls. Anyway, for divorces and widows mainly. And boy, I'm very happy to bring to you Bonita Bell-Anderson and to meet her for the first time. Hi, Bonita.
Hello, good to see you.
Oh, there you are, and I can hear you and you can hear me.
Hey, it's always great when technology works.
Yeah, I often have trouble with my speaker. That's how I know if I turn it off and turn it back on again. Usually it works sometimes. So that was very good for me. Well, I'm going to let you talk and tell us about yourself and what inspired you to write this wonderful book you've written.
Okay. Well, I have been in the financial industry for about 25 years. I never thought I was going to be here because I had helped my husband go through medical school. I'd worked while he was in school, and we had 25 years of marriage. And then he had an affair with an employee, and my whole life, my entire life went sideways.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I can
So,
understand.
I characterize myself as being curled up in a corner, sucking my thumb. And kind of what's in the back of my mind is there was a point, and I can't exactly tell you exactly when it was, but it was like a year. I mean, I was just in the dumps for a long time. And so the stories I tell are from my experience and the mistakes I've made and my journey since then. And so, see, that's been about 25 years ago now. So that I look back on that whole change in my life midstream. And we have 3 daughters. It was hugely impactful on my kids, on my girls. I've got 3 daughters that it just threw us all for a loop, as well as friends. So I understand about having massive changes and being stopped, just not knowing what to do. I ended up going into this industry at that point, and somebody said, you should look at financial services because you'd be good at it. Now, I'd been kind of like marketing, advertising. I'd done in-home businesses while I was raising the girls and, having babies and everything. And so it's turned out to be a great industry for me, because maybe it's because I'm a woman. Maybe it's because women typically in this industry can be more empathetic and understand where people are coming from. And so now I'm spending a lot more time. I have a fantastic team that I work with. And so now I'm getting to just coach people, and here I am writing a book.
Yeah. Wow. We never know that. Me, I never thought I would ever get done with writing a book and publishing it and all of that either. So
Yeah,
we
no
have
way.
new life experiences waiting for us, even after we've had a gigantic life change, right?
Yeah, you never know what's around the corner.
That's for sure. Right. So I was reading your book the other day, and I was very emotional in the first part there, because I mean, it hit home when my husband died and all of that I went through 7 years ago. But I also have a close friend that is now being challenged with well, he was dating a young woman. They're in their early 40s, and he was dating this woman who made more money than he did. And this was a real problem, because he has a mindset, as you say, of a middle income, and she has this wealthy, and they just can't seem to get it together. And so
Yeah.
I said, I got to give this book to him, even though it's for women.
Shelby, another thing that's interesting is I remarried, and I married a gentleman whose wife had died of cancer. So here I am with this whole divorce situation and experience, and he lost his wife to cancer, and he's also hearing disabled somewhat. And as we were getting to know each other, and I've been married to him now for 15 years, as we were learning and getting to know each other, he told me that one of the emotions he went through was being mad at her for dying, because he had depended on her for so much. And so that background of his experience with losing his wife and my experience with going through a divorce is kind of the background stories that helped flesh this out, because I don't know anybody that doesn't have something in their life that they've been really challenged with.
One of the comments he made was she just can't understand that the difference between her privileged life that she was, her father and mother created this business that's worth several $1 million, and he makes 80,000 a year, and he has no way to bridge that gap, really.
Yeah, right. No, because that has not been his experience.
Mm-hmm. So I said, well, maybe you better move on and find another woman. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah, and another thing I really liked about your book was you told what those letters after your name mean. I always get them really confused. Would you like to comment about them?
Well, there's an organization called the American College out there. And when I first started in this industry 25 years ago, I was with Northwestern Mutual, which is a large life insurance organization. But one of the things that they have is they have a great training system for new insurance agents. So so they encouraged me to go get those professional designations. And they basically, the chartered life underwriter goes into all the ins and outs about life insurance products in particular and how you use them effectively. And then the chartered financial consultant goes into estate planning and a lot more breadth of different topics that come up when you're advising somebody on finances. And I thought about going after the CFP, which is Certified Financial Planner. But, I finally said, how many letters do I need behind my name? It was great education, and it really gives me a lot of depth in being able to look at different things, and besides all the life experience I've had. And so that's what they are. They're different professional designations. And it took me about 5 or 6 years to get through all the tests and everything that you go through in order to get those designations. So it's a lot of work, and it's worth it. So whenever you see somebody with letters behind their name, then you can realize that they've gone through a lot of extra testing that they didn't have to do, but they wanted to have that breadth of knowledge and experience too.
So as a chartered life underwriter, does that mean you can write insurance policies?
Yes, I can. I'm also insurance licensed. So I have an insurance license as well as my securities license. So
okay, go ahead.
Well, it's just I was with Northwestern Mutual for about 9 years before I really said, oh, man, I really want to be independent. I don't want to have some big guerrilla company, as great as they are. I don't want some big company behind me trying to influence me on what I do. I'd like to be able to put the client first and then do what's best for the client. So that was what was really the impetus behind wanting to be independent. And so I'm an independent financial advisor. And so I have those licenses and everything, but there's no big company out there trying to influence me. I'm able to make my own decisions on what's best for the client.
So you are in that position that you mentioned in your book about educating, helping your clients to know or make a plan for what fits them.
Right.
And I thought that was very interesting, because I never felt like any of the people that I ever talked to, the financial advisors, they'd ask me what I wanted. Well, I didn't really know what I needed or what I wanted, other than I wasn't very risk tolerant. But as far as and then once I put my money in their account or my account and in their hands, I never heard from them.
Yeah,
again.
I know. That's a big beef. Yeah, I get you. I've been there. I felt that. And so I have, there's been, when people have referred me to somebody, sometimes they've said, you should talk to Bonnie because she's been through it, and so it's like she's got some backgrounds that are similar to yours so that she can, and that's that whole empathy thing, being able to understand where somebody's coming from, because in a lot of cases, especially women, they feel like they're not being heard by that advisor. So that's one of the chapters in the book is how do you pick an advisor? How do you find somebody that you feel like you can resonate with? So it's important because of what I try to teach people in the book about setting yourself up for success for the future. Now that you've gone through all these changes, how do you set yourself up so you can enjoy life and you don't have to worry about money? And you need a partner, you need a team that you feel hears you and understands you.
Especially when you are in your 70s or 60s, 70s, or even 80s.
Exactly.
My husband died when I was 75, and that was 8 years ago now. How important is having an insurance policy when I'm 75 and now I'm 82? I mean,
I have stories of the worst one is probably somebody whose husband had canceled their insurance policies because he figured he didn't want to pay the money anymore. And then he gets sick and then he dies. And then their 401k goes sideways. And then I'm sitting with the wife and she's looking at me going, now what? And at that point, there's not a whole lot I can do. And she actually ended up moving to Colorado to live with a daughter. Well, that's all well and good, but a lot of cases people want to stay independent and be able to see their kids on their own terms. And so, yeah. So that whole thing with insurance is a big misunderstood area about how to correctly use it. I'm with you because a lot of times people need that extra boost later in life is when they need it. Sometimes it comes into really big, important uses if you have a wife who loses her husband to a car accident, when he's 45 or 50. But in most cases, it's going to be the person who's later in life who wishes that spouse who's died now would have had a life insurance policy.
Yeah, I remember when my husband was still alive and we were starting to look at residence for seniors,
Yeah.
And I put in for one. I'm in Michigan, by the way, just south of Kalamazoo. And I was looking at one senior development place in Kalamazoo. And he told me that they're meeting a lot of women and men who the first person that goes into the senior facility uses up all of the money, and then the second spouse has none left over. Yeah. So that I never even thought about that happening, but he said it happened a lot.
Yeah. Well, listen to that person because that's where you get the correct information is people that are in the experience of what happens with those senior living, assisted living developments and everything. And that's where you get the real lowdown on what's real and what really happens. That's been my experience too, is listen to those people because they're the ones that really know. They're not.
So how can you plan for something like that happening? I mean, that the survivor is that through an insurance policy? Or?
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. I would say, see, it doesn't much help later in life if you're not healthy enough to get a life insurance policy. The optimal time is to find a good, caring insurance agent who will help you set up a life insurance policy that will be with you for the rest of your life. And a lot of times that means you have some kind of, cheaper term insurance policy that then can be converted to a whole life or permanent policy, because the insurance company, they're in business because they know people's behavior, but the insurance company knows that most people are not going to die younger. Every once in a while somebody does, but most people are going to live through their life, and then that insurance policy is going to be needed in their older years when term doesn't work anymore. And so you have to have some kind of permanent policy. And like I said, it's a very misunderstood area. So you've got to find somebody who can help you, give you the real, what's really true about life insurance, and help you have something that will help cover final expenses or whatever and later in life. So that's the optimal time. And that's hard because most people don't think about it. They always think, oh, I can do it later. Well, then I've had 60, 65-year-olds who look like deer in the headlights when I meet them for the first time, and they're realizing they should have done something 20 years ago.
But is it too late to do something?
Usually life insurance companies don't do policies like past 80. Well, the problem is, are you going to be like at 75? Are you healthy enough to get a life insurance policy? Because life insurance policies are based on how healthy you are.
Well, I keep getting these things from the bank or from.
Those are little teeny tiny life insurance policies. That might be $10,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they're not very much, and so they're like a little teeny tiny. Now, if you're going to get like a $100,000, $200,000, $250,000, $300,000, $500,000 policy, that's when earlier in life you get a term policy that's cheap and then convert it to something that's permanent.
Okay. What would you say?
So Shelby, yes. if people have never done life insurance, then do the bank $10,000 or $20,000 life insurance policy, because it's better than nothing. And it might cost them, and they make a big deal out of saying no medical exam, and that's great. So go ahead and get it, because you're going to need it. It's going to be needed when that person passes on. So it might be only $20,000, but that might be a real godsend.
Might be just what they need.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give someone who's struggling to make a budget and keep it, follow it?
You know what? Budgets typically don't work, do they? Have you ever really?
I'm surprised to hear you say that, though.
Well, I have struggled with keeping a budget. And really, there's another advisor out there who's actually also, besides being an advisor, he's a stand-up comic, and his name is Garrett Gunderson. He teaches people, and I agree with him, that you need to come from what is your cash flow? What do you want to put into your savings first, and grow your savings, and to continue to help get you in a better and better situation. And for me, I developed a spreadsheet that has these are all the things that are monthly things that I know are going to happen. So that's kind of like my budget. But if you kind of turn that around in your mind and say, okay, I know what my fixed expenses are every month, but if I want to do something that's really cool that I know is going to benefit me, then focus on your savings and making sure you have enough savings so that when something really cool comes along, then you can dip into your savings and get that neat thing. And because if it's not going to be in your budget, is it? Because you didn't know about it. And so I try to flip budgeting on its head. And so that's another thing that I go into in the book is how do you set up yourself for effective money management? Because in most times it's a train wreck. I think people hate budgeting, and that's because it's like restrictive, right? It makes you feel like you're coming from a space of scarcity, and I want you to come from a space of abundance and just how do I create my best life? So I have a little bit different take on budgeting, because I don't want to be restricted by some numbers on a piece of paper. So you never know. You never know what really great. What's that?
I said you really don't know. Sometimes they but I get hit with the ones that are annually, you pay annually or quarterly, and oops, whoops, I forgot about that one,
Yeah.
And,
So basically that's one of the things on my spreadsheet is like, oh, like I have annual, well, like my life insurance policy. The cheapest way to pay a life insurance policy is on an annual basis. And so that, for me, that comes due in September. Well, I divide that money up into monthly, and I have a savings account for that life insurance premium, so that when September comes, I've got enough money and I just pay it. So yeah. And I didn't always remember everything, Shelby. I go, oh, dang, I forgot about that. And so the first thing I did was put it on my sheet so that I would remember when something was going to come due.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. There was how did we talk about this? But how do you have keys for a great money mindset?
Yes, yes, I do.
Or we want to talk about the mistakes?
I kind of took can I kind of go through some of the things that I thought would be helpful with talking about the book. And right. Because we've talked a little bit about the challenges. When somebody has gone, and so I'm going to give you some of my high points from the book.
Okay.
When somebody goes through a big life change, and like me, my graphic is I'm curled up in a corner sucking my thumb because I'm so blown away by what's happened. Well, you basically, in my case, what I did was say, dang it, I'm not going to let this destroy me. And so and I wish I would have had somebody like me back then, because, this is all trial and error that I went through. But you have to build a new foundation. You have to pick yourself up and say, I'm so grateful for the years I had with that relationship, but now things are different. And so you have to build a new foundation. And so another one of the challenges, especially for gals, is navigating your personal finance independently. In a lot of cases, I would see gals who would say, oh, he takes care of it. And I'm like, no, sister, you need to know what's happening with your finances. So it might be a big leap, but you have to. I mean, there's nobody, if somebody else was taking care of your financial world, now you've got to buckle up and you've got to take care of it yourself. And the other thing, the big thing that I teach, because since I'm an investor coach, I want people to transform their relationship with money. I want them to, instead of, again, thinking in a scarcity mindset, I want you to view money as a resource. And I want you to focus on, what do I want to do with my life now? Where do I want to go? And so this book is kind of like a friend that's reaching out to you at a time when everything in your life has shifted, right? And I had a friend like that when everything was shifting for me. And so it isn't just about learning to manage those numbers, because a lot of times people will say, oh, I'm not good with money. Well, you need to change that. And it's really about, what do you want your life to look like? And, my experience too, Shelby, is if your money is settled, then a lot of times the rest of your life is settled. If your money's in chaos, then the rest of your life is going to be in chaos, right?
Right.
So before we get into some of those money principles, I want to just continue on. One of the things I do is talk a little bit about understanding the impact. Sleep. You can have sleep disturbances, changes in appetite and digestive issues. I remember when I went through my divorce, I can't lose weight now for the life of me, but I lost 15 pounds immediately because I wasn't eating right. And I went,
yeah.
yeah.
10 times when my mother died.
And so like the money stuff will completely go sideways if you're not taking care of yourself. If you don't feel like it, then you're not going to. Things like fatigue and headache, it's all, you have to realize you have to keep your body going, because this is the only body you have. And you have to not only be mentally healthy, you need to work on your mental state, but you can have a weakened immune system, elevated blood pressure, and all of those things that can make you just feel terrible. If you feel terrible, you're not going to feel like dealing with your money, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just something that I go through, you know, because it's from my own experience. I know what it felt like. I know I knew what it felt like to feel smushed into the dirt, and to also have 3 daughters that I had to support. So here's the thing, because I talk a little bit about kids. I knew that I wanted to be as healthy as I could be in order to support my girls, because they were all hurting as well. Mm-hmm. Right? So it all, so I realized it all started with me. So that was the most important thing. So now, with that little preamble, let's get to what you were asking about. Well, what are some things that you can do? I talk about 6 keys for a winner's money mindset. And so we're going to get to the investor loop in a minute. Okay. Fill your mind with the best information is the first key. So how do you do that? Well, again, if I feel like this is part of what I'm doing now, is trying to coach people. And so having venues like this to be able to help people get some of the basics that are going to be important. So if they feel like they want to have somebody that's in their neighborhood, then they can know what to look for. Because mm-hmm. I've always said, start with asking good questions. Well, what if you don't know what the right questions are to ask?
That's a big problem.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
That's a big problem for me anyway.
Yeah. So number 2 is pick a few great role models. Find somebody that's doing a good job, and find and ask them, what are the things that you've done, right? And so I'm trying to lay some of those things out in the book, but that is a good thing to do. And that goes for anything in life, to pick a few great role models. So along with this whole idea of transforming your relationship with money, the key number 3 is to examine your current beliefs. If you came from, like you were talking about that couple, where did your family come from? What were some of the money messages that you heard when you were little? Was it like money doesn't grow on trees? Or those evil people that make more money than us? What did you, like Shelby, did you have any negative money messages from family when you were growing up?
It was always scarce. We lived in Arkansas, and we were poor. We came to Michigan, so after the war, so my dad could get a job and earn some money. And when he wanted to retire, he wanted to go back to Arkansas. And my mother said, "No, I'm not going back to Arkansas." I said, "Why are you not going back to Arkansas?" "Well, because that means it was poor." We were poor when I was in Arkansas. Yeah. So
I mean, that's very common, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then pass that on to my kids, probably.
Yeah, we do. We don't even know it. It's kind of like in the background. Mm-hmm. So
we had a much better, easier time of it than my parents did, Yes. But yeah, my son is though, he's making good money, or my friend, and but it's not anywhere comparison to someone who's a $20 million person, right. Or so.
But see, the thing that most people don't do is they don't realize that they need to put some principles in place that are going to help them keep more money. But then if you have more, if you can manage to keep more, then maybe you can go out and change that mindset so that you can go out and do some good in the world, do some volunteering, do some contributions to things that you're passionate about. So
go ahead. No.
Well, the fourth key that I talk about in the book is fortifying your mindset with a vision and set goals. Sometimes goal setting is hard for people too, but this all gets back to having a purpose for your money. And if you had disposable income, what would you do with it? Or how would you like to live now? Do you want to change up just how you think about what you would like to have in your life? So, and you have to protect your mindset. That's hard. You have to stay in the conversation with others that have the same mindset. Mm-hmm. Now, I've made a lot of mistakes, Shelby, and so that colors my experience as well. And so another one of these keys is don't let a mistake trash your money mindset. In a minute, we're going to talk about this ineffective investor loop, but I want you to know that people shouldn't define themselves by having made a mistake in any part of life. Right?
Right.
So, okay, before we get into the ineffective investor loop, which is my favorite, let's talk about that whole money management thing. Principle number one is pay yourself first, right? If you're working, dang it, when you get that money inflow every month, set aside 5%, 10%. When you get a raise, allocate part of it to paying yourself first. So that is that principle has been around a long time. So, and the second principle is getting your estate in order. Most people, a lot of times people don't even want to think about getting their estate in order, but it's super important, like meaning getting your will. Spend within your budget. Okay, so we talked a little bit about budget, and I can talk to people, I'm going to be doing online workshops and stuff about how to flip that whole budgeting nonsense on its head. Okay. So that you think about, here's the things that I have to pay for every month, but I want to focus on paying myself first, and I want to focus on cash flow and increasing my cash flow. Let's see, what are the other things? Limiting debt. Oh boy, that's a big hard one, isn't it? Is trying to limit debt. And so there's people like Dave Ramsey that have something called a debt snowball. And so those are all super, super important things. You can see I can do online workshops for every single one of these things. Tracking and paying your taxes. If you don't pay your taxes, and so like, for example, a gal who's now single, she's going to have to start remembering when to pay the taxes on the house, things like that. And also doing your income tax. So, okay. So before we get in, one last thing before we get into this effective investor loop.
Okay.
Don't chase after the latest investment trend. And so you've already kind of before we were on air, you already talked about how you got into Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or something.
Yeah, got scammed.
Oh man, you have to be really careful. And I'm not a fan of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and this is not the venue to talk about that. But yeah, so with you've had a negative experience, and you need to. The big thing that I teach people about how to invest is to diversify widely. And so those are some big things. Okay. So that we've seen that ineffective investor loop a couple of times. So now you can bring it up on the thing.
Okay.
My experience with investing before I was doing what I'm doing now was following the latest guru, the options guy, the guy that would promise all kinds of things. And I finally realized, girl, you have no business trying to invest in the stock market yourself. So,
My boy, yeah,
so number one is realizing you need to invest. You know that you need to invest. You know that you need to have a place where you can get some interest. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to head into the ineffective investor loop, but it usually is accompanied by a sense of insecurity and really uncertainty about the future. So there's big media and big investment company advertisers that really, are really slick, and they prey upon the desire for instant gratification. So you will get into something, and in a lot of cases, it's getting number 2, partial or bad information. But you don't know, right? You don't know that it's partial or bad information. You just don't know.
Right.
So there's one constant that remains through all of that is educating yourself and gathering information that is good, sound information. So the dangers of relying on fragmented information or sources that you don't really know the background about, that's where people get into the problem. And number 3, you'll just go, oh, what the heck, I'm just going to invest in something. And so that's number 3, take your money and buy some stuff, and at least you feel like, well, at least I'm doing something, right? I'm doing something. But in most cases, people don't have any kind of trading plan. They're chasing performance. They're ignoring risk aversion. You talked about being adverse to taking too much risk. Lots of times people have no idea how much risk they're taking. They don't even think about their time horizon. These are all like lingo in the financial world. Stop loss orders, letting losses grow, believing false buy signals. I had a program once that was red arrows and green arrows. And now I look back and I say, oh, it's a joke. When the program gave me a green arrow, I would buy something. When the program gave me a red arrow, I would sell something. Well, that was a terrible. Yeah. But in most cases, you're following the herd, right? And if you've ever heard Warren Buffett, he's like, usually do exactly the opposite of what everybody else is doing, because they're usually falling right off a cliff. So there you are. You've number 3, you've bought some stuff. And then what happens? What happens, Shelby? You tell me what happens. Number 4.
You get you take your losses and
isn't it like almost a joke that the minute you buy something, it crashes? Yeah, it's like, how does that happen? Right. And so, but it's another principle called market cycles, and the markets go up and down. But there's political events that happen, but there's it's just, if you need to have a perspective on market crashes and how the market works. So this again goes into educating yourself. So then what happens? So you've gone through that market crash, and then you lose money, right? And you feel like, oh, I'm so stupid. And you don't feel like, oh, that makes me mad. And I didn't have that much to begin with. And so it's like, shoot. And so you'll sell and get out, locking in your losses. That's the last part of it, selling and getting out. And so then you get out, you lick your wounds, and then what happens? You, after a period of time, you go, I need to get back into it.
Right.
And so then you repeat the cycle. So this is what I'm trying to avoid. So I know
We
our
have
time.
about 3 minutes.
Yeah. So I know our time is getting short.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I talk about in the book also is finding, how do you find an advisor? And so remember how I said, start with asking good questions.
Mm-hmm.
I have a list of questions that you can ask, but
They're very good.
I've gone from being, like an advisor. I now call myself an investor coach, because I'm dealing with not only all the financial principles, but the psychological and the behavior. And so we coach about, how do you marry great financial principles with great behavior, right? And so you need to do your diligence, and you need to ask those questions that are important. And so you need to understand about some of the things that are out there, like GIPS. That's a third party company that looks at and analyzes investment companies to see how well they're doing, and if what the numbers are that they're giving people are real. Most people don't even have a clue that that's out there and available.
What was that again? The name of that?
GIPS, Global Investment Performance System. And it's a global GIPS compliant firms. There's not that many of them, because most companies don't want to pay for that third party look at what their numbers are. But when I found what I'm doing now, I work with an investment manager that is honest and ethical. And I, having been in this, going independent in this industry, I wanted somebody that I felt like I could trust. And so that's where what I'm telling people is they need to educate themselves, and then they need to have somebody that they feel is in their corner. So I know we need to wrap up. I want to leave you with my book is about 2 weeks away from being on Amazon. And so in the show notes, you do show notes, right? Or a transcript or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, so we will have the link to Amazon to get the book in about 2 weeks. I had hoped to have the link on Amazon by today, but it's okay. It'll be in the show notes. But I want you to think about adopting a mindset of growth and possibility. And yes, you think back on life with gratitude of what are the great things that we had, and what are the great experiences we had, and now look forward to, how am I going to craft my life now? Embracing those changes means not only surviving them, but embracing how to grow and how to make informed decisions. So you're standing at the threshold of a new beginning, really.
Okay, well, I think we have to call it in. Can you come back another time sometime?
I can, because we could pick one little piece and delve into it in greater depth.
That's for sure. And I want to know about your courses you're going to give.
Yeah,
so
what I'm going to be doing is probably just doing courses on each piece of this that we've touched on.
All right, well, we'll look forward to that again. And next week, we're having a fellow here from talk to us about cyber crimes. And really looking forward to that, too. But thank you so much, Bonita, for coming today.
Oh, you bet. I really enjoyed being here.
Good. We're off the air. Bye, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.